Hi guys, and welcome to our next art tutorial. Today we're going to be talking about how to carve a stamp out of linoleum. So I'm going to bring the camera down so you can see the tools that we are working with. All right, so for today specifically, what we have is a stamp that had already had a drawn design on it that wasn't fully carved. Whenever you're going to start with one, you're going to get a plain linoleum like this. And it looks like this person actually just hand drew their design on here. And I'm going to kind of finish up areas of the stamp for this. But whenever we are doing this, there's two ways to get your image on here. You can either directly draw it on here with pencil. So if you mess up, you can erase it. You can do it with Sharpie, or you can use the transfer paper that we did back in the Unit 1 with drawing, and you can transfer an image on here. So let's say you found a printout of something that you're really interested in, but you're not too hot with the drawing skills. You would use the transfer paper and then put the image on top, outline it, and then it would transfer on here. And this way you would know what you're carving, what you're not carving. So whenever we're starting, what I generally would like to start out with first, and like I said, this one was an incomplete stamp. They hadn't quite finished it, which is why I wanted to bring it out first. Normally, whenever you first have a design and you're going to start first cutting, you want to use an Exacto blade. And the reason I bring this up first before we use a carving tool is because when you use an Exacto knife, you want to kind of slice through the outline to make a nice straight, not curve, divot. Sorry, my brain's a little tired this morning, but I like it so I can get really sharp edges. And that way it doesn't look so muddled whenever I do the ink. So as I was saying, this one is already started, but not areas are done. So I'm going to go through and use the X-acto knife to cut out areas like these little details here and kind of shape them up a little bit. And just as a reminder, if you've ever used an X-acto in my class, remember you need the blade to stay away from your fingers preferably, so you do not hurt yourself. So depending on how thick you want to have the lines or how delicate it is, that's where you need to kind of consider your outlines. Do you want a thick outline? Do you want a thin outline? And an X-acto knife is really helpful, at least in the beginning when you're first carving, so that way you can kind of decide from the beginning what's going to look better. And even let's say you do a thin outline and then you test it with your ink and you're like, oh, it's not really showing up. You would just clean the linoleum on here, and then you would go back with an X-acto knife or a carving tool, and you would just thicken up some of these lines. So really what I'm doing right now is kind of doing a V shape, and it's really hard to tell. So when I'm cutting slightly at an angle going this way, and then I'm cutting at an angle going this way. So it's thicker over here at the top of the surface of the linoleum, but it's thinner at the bottom inside the actual stamp itself. There we go. It's pretty easy to cut. It's really soft. And I really love working with these because you don't have to heat them up with a iron before carving. The ones that I used a long time ago when I first learned were really hard. And so we always had to get the iron warmed up like you would like iron your clothes. And we'd have to put it on top of here for a few seconds to warm up the actual linoleum before we could start carving. But purposely, we are using the easy ones. Okay. All right, got a little bit out of there. And I'll kind of get us a little bit closer to the camera. So as I was talking about earlier, I went back with the X-acto and I used a V technique again where I was carving slightly at an angle and then the other side as another angle. And that's to make this outline a little bit thicker than what some of these lines delicately are. Like I said, it's fine to have delicate lines, but sometimes whenever you do your ink, you'll realize, hey, that's not really thick enough outline to see everything. So now this tool, depending on if it's middle school or high school, middle schoolers are going to be using this carving tool where it looks like a plastic stick and you have the carving tool at the very top. And these are removable, so just be delicate with it if you can. But let me kind of show you as an example how easy it is to use this and how simple it is to use this stuff to carve. Now it looks like this person originally did some type of hole or something down here. I'm just going to kind of do a small area just to show you how quick and easy it is. So again, pretend this is like an Exacto knife, even though it's like kind of more of a U shape. You do not want your fingers to be in the way of this, because if you're struggling to push, and all of a sudden you go whoosh, and your hand is here, you will stab it. I've seen plenty of those times, and it's not fun to watch. So what you would do is just keep your hand out of the way, and you would just kind of push down a little bit. And as you can see, it's just kind of carving out, and it's really soft linoleum, so this is not difficult at all to do it. If you need to turn your linoleum so you can continue the cut without making any harsh lines, or if you're afraid that you're going to mess it up, it's always good to keep turning the linoleum so that way you can keep everything consistent. And depending on how deep you want the impression, such as this, will depend on what the impression you'll get in the end. So for some of you who did the foam stamp exercise, you quickly realize that if your lines were not deep enough, you usually didn't get the good results. If it was too deep, sometimes it would fill too much with too much ink, and then it would have the same issue. But we'll go into more of that in our next exercise. But once you have the design drawn out, you just use your tool. Don't push too hard. If you feel any resistance, you can push a little bit, but if it's still resisting, just stop what you're doing and take your tool out. Like I said, it's good to use the Exacto knife if you get stuck on a few areas. So if I wanted to go back and kind of carve out an area that's not really wanting me to pull it out, instead of using this, I would use the Exacto. But as I said, this is just a quick tutorial to kind of get introducing you to the tools that you'll be working with. And that way you have a better stamp that you'll be creating during your semi-project. All right. Well, if you have any questions or concerns, guys, please, again, as always, ask me in person, send me a message on Schoology. And other than that, I look forward to seeing you all next time. All right. Talk to you later.